going to bring us to our main conversation today. We're in year 2 of the conflict in Ukraine and Russia. Do you care, Hilary? Yes or no?
No.
Well, thank you. Do you care, CEO?
I feel like I should, but I don't.
Okay, foreign affairs, black people, nationalism, our identity in country is a really tricky space. We have these conversations, and it's very difficult for us to sort of articulate what patriotism looks like for Black America. Like, even if you are thinking about the Olympics, for example, right?
I'm going.
We're rooting for USA, but we specifically rooting for the black athletes, right? Like that's, so there's this really tenuous line. People who are watching this either A, may not know how to explain it, or there may be some folks who aren't from our community who are interested about how do we have this conversation? Like, because we exist in a very dual space in America, like especially Black Americans. This is why I'm glad I have both of you all. It's one thing to say, I'm Guyanese American or I am Nigerian American, where you kind of sort of have one foot in another place. But when you are a ADOS American, if you want to use that, right? It's a different conversation. But at the same time, the patriotism only goes so far.
Do you want to be Black first, or you want to go to CEO first and be African American?
I'm going to go, you know what? Just disrespectful. CEO,
This is a border. This is really a border right now.
It's never a border. You've been African American this whole show.
First of all, you just need to know that I can go back and forth. I'm not.
Well, I'm waiting on
I sit
an
on
ally.
the line.
I'm waiting on an ally. For some reason, you only align with unity.
Look, I sit on the line, and I can step on the line either way.
Do it.
You've been African American all
I haven't,
the entire episode.
I've been fairly Black.
Fairly?
The whole entire time. Just one time when you guys caught me off guard.
Yeah, no, you walked right into that joint too. All right, CEO.
So here's what's very interesting, and I think I mentioned this to you before in the conversation. America is very unique in the sense that America is not for anybody, right? So, because you even said, oh, if you're a Nigerian American, Guyanese, they will never even say those words. If you ask them, I'm Guyanese.
That's facts.
I'm Nigerian, right?
That's facts.
America doesn't have a culture for us to attach to, right? So that's why they can be proud about it. This is why our patriotism is aligned with athletics, right? Or the military. Our patriotism doesn't lie with the country. It's always attached to the military, it's attached to sports, things of that nature. If the patriotism
was your patriotism attached to Barack when he was president?
No, I was attached to Barack because he was Black. But it had nothing to do
But he was
with
the
America.
president though.
But it had nothing to do with America. It had to do with our experience.
How
in
didn't
America.
he? He was the president of the United States.
This is what I'm saying, because it has to do with our experience, like Black American experience. There's never anything that's just purely American.
What I'm saying to you though is you rooted for Barack, did you not?
Yes.
Okay, you rooted for Barack as president. He's president of the United States, so there is a connection to the patriotism
But no,
there,
because
regardless.
because in context, it wasn't about him being the president of the United States. It was a Black man becoming president in a country where we came in here as slaves. Right, it's completely different. It's never about America. Right. It's always America dash something.
Right.
Every other country doesn't have to deal with that. So that's what I'm saying. It's not patriotism. Patriotism should, from a solidarity standpoint, be about the country, and it never is. You can't find it where it's just only white Americans do that, and even when they do that, it's still somehow attached to the military, to the government. It's never just this is the country we live in. No, it's about support the troops and this, that, and the third. No other country does that.
Right. I mean, for me, as succinctly as I can put it, in the great words of Issa Rae, I am rooting for everybody Black, but also I don't love anybody that does not love me. That's just a mantra of mine.
Yeah, that's very much you.
So for me, America, until it starts to show me love, I don't really owe it anything like that.
But
does
that, the end result of that, doesn't that leave us somewhat? And I understand everything and agree with everything you said about not loving who doesn't love you. But doesn't that leave us kind of homeless in the conversation about like
So if you look at
national pride, and I don't mean national pride in the sense of like U.S.
Yeah.
Pause that. Put the brakes on that. I'm not saying that.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, just in terms of like home base.
Depends on what your capacity is, though, right?
Okay.
Because for me, I don't really look at I talk about Dallas, and Dallas is my home, right? And I can narrow it down to that molecule, right? But the reality is, I'm on a whole planet in a whole universe. Earth is my home. You know what I'm saying? So I don't really have to limit myself.
You sounding real Badu.
I just don't really have to limit myself to being
Sounds
from
like Kyrie.
the United States of America. You know what I'm saying? If this thing has denied me, and so.
So you're a citizen of Earth, is what you're saying?
Absolutely. And if I want to write that down, I can. And it's true. It is true. And if I want to write down the galaxy I'm from, I could put Milky Way. You see what I'm saying? There's so many things and ways I could spend it.
I do, but I feel like I do, but I feel like you you're not dodging the question necessarily, but you're not dealing with it. You're not dealing with it head on.
Well, I live here, so when things happen here, like we experienced 9/11, we were there when that happened,
yes,
right?
Yes.
We were present for that.
Right.
And the reality of that, did it affect us? Yeah, somewhat. It did, absolutely. We were here and we saw people go to war and all of those things. But to be honest, did it affect us?
America,
No.
for black people in America, it's like having a bad parent. It's like having a shitty parent.
Yeah.
Right?
They're still your parent.
This is your parent. You love them because this is the only parent you know.
I don't know if you love them.
No, you don't like them, but you love them, right? Because you love them because there's a certain innate thing. Like, this is my home. At the end of the day, my home is America. I don't know anything else, right? I want better and I want more. So I don't necessarily, okay, it might be bad because I don't really love America. But
this is what I'm talking about.
You,
this is
damn,
you
I
were
tried.
really trying to lie.
You was trying.
My bad.
You were,
You know what I'm saying? I was like,
but
As
again,
I was saying it,
I was leaning,
did he not get caught
leaning
up?
across the line.
Because you just said, I can be black, and then you went into the African-American shit, right?
I'm having deja vu right now.
Yeah, and then you had to walk it back. You was like, I'm
This
really
is a Kyrie
messing up.
moment in real life.
You were like, I'm messing up.
Shit.
No,
it's complicated because like you sit and I haven't personally had anybody try to engage me about Ukraine, for example. Yeah. But it's a very I'm just using that as one example. There are several others. There are all kinds of stories in the news people talk about, and I really want to look them in the face and be like, unless I was a general in the military or have someone who's in military. And that's like a concern for them, or quite frankly, I'm making money off of this conflict in some way, shape, because there are some people who are making money off of it.
A lot of money.
Right? I'm like,
so you're making money out of prisons.
Right. I'm like, black people don't care about this. I don't.
So that's the thing about rescuing Ukraine
crazy
for black people. We have been in a space in this country specifically where we needed help. We needed somebody on the outside to come on the inside and help us, right? Who did that? Who helped us?
Not near another.
I can't think, even Africa. We can't think of anybody who came over here to just say, help them. They knew we were in help them. We helped. So listen, I don't really have to think about, I don't have the capacity, the mental space. They can't live rent-free in my head. I pray that they get out of that conflict with Vladimir Putin. Because he seemed like he got his knee in their neck. Whatever. But I can't think about that.
And I think it's also, it's very, very complicated. And a lot of people wouldn't understand this, for example, that the lens that we tend to look at the world, especially as Black Americans, is that we are Black first, right? And so even though we might joke and be like, what was Black people doing in Ukraine? You can't have a conversation with me about the conflict and feeling the way that everyone else feels from a humanitarian standpoint and completely ignore the level of racism and discrimination that we witnessed when everything was happening, people trying to evacuate, and Black people began to tell their stories about that. And, and then it's kind of like, again, and they're like, well, what about national pride and patriotism and our global humanity? It's kind of like, well, I get it. I'm not saying that global humanity isn't a thing and shouldn't be prioritized, but that is a very complicated space for us. And I think that people take for granted the level of complexity that is involved when you're talking about Black people and whatever you are calling patriotism. So, I wanted to have this conversation because I thought that it was a really important one. We get into spaces where this is discussed, and I think people either feel uncomfortable really making it known how they feel, or they may not have the language to express how they feel. But a lot of us feel this way, and it is a very complicated conversation for us to have. And so now, either you may have different points that you haven't thought of, or you could just point somebody directly to this conversation and say, hey, listen, you might want to listen to this, because that conversation we had in the lunchroom wasn't really just it. It's not that simple for me where I sit.